We're going to do something a little bit different today. This is my buddy Noah, an awesome comic book artist, and of course, huge Star Wars fan. We are going to recover and break down every episode of Andor Season 1 leading into Season 2, and then we'll continue on with that one.
Yeah,
Noah, thanks for making the time to come on. This is going to be awesome.
I have so much time for Andor. Some might say too much time. My partner might say that. My friends and everyone else who will let me talk about Andor. Yeah.
Well, you're in the right place because obviously
Good.
there is no such thing as too much time given to Star Wars here.
Yes, exactly. Big
Yeah,
fan.
you were telling me before we hit record that you've watched Andor where you could probably describe it word for word and not leave a single detail out.
Yeah, I think so. But I will, like when the first three episodes dropped, I showed it to like three people that same week. Like I just repeat watched it right away. I was so excited about it. And then, yeah, I've watched the series. It's my comfort watch. I watch it every couple months, that kind
It's
of
kind
thing.
of a bleak comfort watch.
Yeah, I don't know. I find it to be the harsh reality of a fantasy world to be kind of comforting for some weird reason. So um,
Yeah.
yeah, I love this show a lot. I'm really excited to talk about it and to break down these first three, which I think are my favorite three. Even though the whole show is great, I think these first three are the best. Um,
Okay.
yeah,
That's interesting because I remember when it came out, the kind of buzz online was it's a good show, but you have to get through the first three because they're real boring. And when I was rewatching it, I'm like, they're not boring. A lot's
no.
happening every episode.
Yeah, but it was when I was showing it to people, it was interesting to gauge people's interest that way because I
Okay.
watched it with my friends Veronica and Sarah, and the three of us, along with others, have kind of followed the Disney Plus shows, like watched them weekly together since Andor, and the three of us were like, "This show is the best. Like, this is great." Then I showed it to my sister, and she was like, "Yeah, I like it, but I kind of want to see where it goes." And then I showed it to some other friends, and they were like, "This is boring. I do not want any more of this." And I've done it
Yeah.
with like I've tried showing it to other people too, and it's sort of the same thing. Like it's sort of a mixed bag. But this is for me. I think these first three episodes hooked me. I immediately was like, no, best Star Wars show, top 5 Star Wars things ever, that kind of thing. Like right from these first three.
Yeah, I fall somewhere in the middle. I mean, I love it. I don't. My only overall, and I guess this is kind of jumping the gun, but my only overall complaint is it doesn't have any, and I know it's a more serious show, so people are probably going to think I'm an idiot for this being my only complaint, but it doesn't have any of the kind of magic and whimsy that Star Wars is known for.
Yes.
And I understand it's just another flavor of the same thing, and I'm totally cool with that. So it's like a contradiction in my own head.
Yeah, I think the upon rewatch of these first three episodes, I was surprised at what levity there is with like characters like B2 Emo, aliens like Vetch, the big fish guy,
Yeah.
and sort of things like that. But it's very few and far between, and there are little things there. But this show takes itself very seriously. Not a lot of whimsy, not a lot of magic, but still a lot of adventure, which I think is sort of the bare minimum that you need for a Star Wars show to make it qualify as a Star Wars show. So,
Yep.
yeah,
A lot of world building and stuff, which I always appreciate.
yes, exactly. A lot of lore.
Yeah, a lot of that's what I'm in it for.
Yeah.
A lot of lore. All right. Well, even though you know these inside and out, because this can serve as something of a recap for people who maybe don't have time to rewatch every episode of a season before the next one comes out, I have quick paragraphs, and hopefully they're accurate. I just asked ChatGPT to do a summary because I would end up rambling and going in all sorts of branches and stuff, and
Yeah,
I
and
try not to rely on AI.
I
But
would recount it moment to moment. That's how you can't summarize this. You can't summarize it. Yeah.
all right, so just call me out if I'm wrong.
Okay.
Episode 1, titled Casa. Cassian Andor searches for his missing sister on the corporate-controlled world of Morlana 1. After a confrontation with 2 corrupt Pre-Mor security officers, he kills them and flees to Ferrix. There, Cassian tries to uncover his tracks and find a way off-world. I'm sorry, he tries to cover his tracks and find a way off-world, seeking the help of his friend Bix Kalleen to sell stolen Imperial tech. Meanwhile, Deputy Inspector Cyril Karn becomes obsessed with bringing Cassian to justice, despite orders to ignore the incident. That feels accurate, but it also feels like it missed the mark.
Yeah, I think it misses, well, because it's a show that relies so heavy on the emotions of the characters that you kind of have to go in understanding the intense feelings that everybody has.
Yeah.
And from the beginning, it grounds you in this emotional state that Andor is in, looking for his sister. And we don't know who his sister is, why he's looking for his sister, and we find out through these 3 episodes why.
Right.
But so much of the show is motivated by the emotions of these people, specifically the rebellious nature of all these people, including, you know, Cyril Karn, who you did mention, who is rebelling. He is purely motivated by emotion and a dedication to a cause that has no play in what he does for a living.
Right.
And like, it's sort of, yeah, everybody is operating off of this just deep desire to either survive or rebel. It's really, yeah, you have to sort of ground the show in that.
I did really like Cyril Karn as the anti Cassian Andor, where,
Yeah,
like you said, they're both rebelling, so you could put them parallel. But he's rebelling so hard, like, he's got Imperial Stormtrooper posters in his bedroom, and he just can't wait for the Empire to come and recruit him. And he so badly wants to be an officer. And like, just that one scene where his commanding officer is looking, his uniform's kind of ill-fitting and it's a little bit loose and a little bit dingy, and he's like, did you modify your uniform? And he like took it in and tightened it and added piping and stuff. Like, he's beyond proud to be a company man. It's just such a perfect.
yeah, it is, and it's so essential for this show and sort of good TV shows in general to have characters at different paths along an arc towards what the theme is, and the theme of this being rebellion. So Andor is only rebelling for himself, only doing things, no, not devoted to a cause other than his own survival.
Yeah.
Versus Cyril Karn, who is devoted to this idea of the control of the empire and, an authority and things like that. And they show that so well through the visual language, like you brought up with his costume, contrasting him with Andor, who is not tailored at all. Like, he's the most disheveled, like all his clothing is ill-fitted and
Mm-hmm.
baggy and everything like that, and just a mess. And from the beginning, he's a mess too. Like, he comes into, like, from the rain into the bar, and he just looks like garbage, and
Right.
that kind of thing. And then he, through this whole time in Ferrex, he's just like, trying to survive. I like, in the visuals back this up. He's just digging through trash to find something to get him out of there. Like, his ship is trash, where he stores all his stuff is trash, his droid is trash, that kind of thing. Like, he is the most, he's just a scrounger. So if he's rebelling, it's just completely just to get by. Versus, yeah, Cyril, who just needs to sit down, like, take a breath, that kind of thing.
Right.
Like, just chill out, dude.
You're putting all your energies into the wrong thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because even to kind of build on what you were saying about Cassian, even amongst the people who are supposed to be his friends, even his adopted mother, they're all just kind of like, oh, Cassian, like, why are you this way? Can you just stop for a minute?
Yeah, he's such a burnout. Like, he's like he's borrowing money from all these different people. He owes money. And I talked about Vetch, who's like my favorite side character. He's this big, muscly, like whale like alien that comes to muscle Cassian into paying his debts. And like, so Cassian's just a wreck. Like, the dude has nothing, like, he just has nothing going for him. He's such a mess. And
Yeah, he's on the run from everybody.
yeah, he is. Again, versus Cyril Karn, who just seems to not get how cushy his job is, and like, thankfully he can't leave it alone, so we get the story. But like, he cannot leave well enough alone. He wants to be devoted to a cause, and like you said, it's just wrong cause. Don't get into this one. Yeah.
Yeah, and Cyril Karn almost kind of gets his Luthen in the guy who's kind of under him, but also like, no, come on, we got to do this. I don't know the character's name. I forget.
His name is Linus Mosk.
Lina. Okay, that's a great name.
Or Mosk. I think it's Mosk. Yeah, no, the names in this show are great too. I mean, Cyril Karn, Linus Musk, Luthen Rail, great names.
Yeah, they're all great Star Wars names. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, he finds this guy, and he's like, hey, am I taking this too far? And the guy's like, you're not taking it far enough. We got to go harder. And it's like, this is the wrong person to be talking to Cyril Karn. It is not going to rein him in at all.
No.
And you could tell when they go to Ferrix, they don't mean to make a mess of things. They don't mean to gun people down in the streets, and it gets way out of hand. I guess I'm jumping ahead 2 episodes now, but yeah, they're just the wrong people to be goading each other on.
They really are. And it's really great to see kind of like, I feel like the show is telling Star Wars to chill out too, you know, that kind of thing with Cyril Karn. You know, this guy who has this inflated vision of himself in there as this sort of hero. Oh, did I lose you?
Oh, we dropped for a second. That was weird.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you were saying it's telling Star Wars to chill out, that Cyril Karn has this inflated vision of himself.
Yeah, Cyril Karn sees himself as like an Anakin Skywalker, chosen one, who is sort of the objective, like, you know, the guy who holds the objective state of reality in the palm of his hands, like knows what's right, knows what's, you know, what needs to be acted upon, so takes it upon himself to do that. And yeah, then he meets Mosk, who, you know, you could see a little bit of like Anakin Skywalker in Cyril Karn as well, and like Mosk being his emperor, you know, telling him like, yes, you know, like go to the dark side.
The devil on the shoulder.
Yeah, you know, like, you know, take the power for yourself, that kind of thing. Kind of a cool sort of, you know, and again, like an Obi-Wan and Luke Skywalker kind of thing going on there too, but it's like the anti-version of that, you know?
Yeah.
This whiny kid, you know, Cyril's a whiny kid, like Luke and Anakin, that kind of thing, but he's clearly a bad guy, who is not putting his determination in the right place. Versus Andor, who is so focused on the reality he lives in, which is that he has nothing, you know, and he has nothing but his own life pretty much to fight for, and his mother, you know, like he's very, like, you know, he doesn't have time for causes because every day is just another struggle for him. So, you know, when he's presented by Luthen Rael with the idea of joining this cause, it takes a lot for him to want to join, because he's like, I just want to pay off my debts and then just live quietly and, you know, take care of my mom. That's pretty much all he wants to do.
And with the taking care of the mom thing, so much of his going off on his own and kind of being a dirtbag in the beginning and owing all these people, like, if he just stayed with his mom and did his job with his friends, I mean, obviously he would never become like a rebel hero. There's no greatness in that. But he was like getting in the way of his own goal.
Yeah, he was. And I think some of that you understand, because it seems like he wants to find his sister. But another part of it is also, it just sounds like Andor's is kind of a scummy dude. You know? Like
it's even in my notes, like watching these first 3 episodes, like, you don't like Andor.
No.
And I mean, obviously that's the point, because it makes his arc that much more, there's that much more payoff.
Yeah, he's not a hero at all at the beginning. I think the thing that endears you to him is how he interacts with the people around him, and I think that would be a cool thing to talk about, are all the side characters that you get introduced in these first couple episodes too. I think first off, how he is so respectful to the woman at the I don't know, space brothel. You know,
that's a nice term for it.
He's very charming to her, and he's very polite and respectful. And obviously, it's like you like to see a guy stand up to bullies and things like that. But also, I love to see his interaction with B2, and everybody's interactions with B2. But he treats that droid with such respect and almost like a peer, you know, more than like a slave or like a dog or something like that. He's just trying to get him to. He's like that friend that's a little slow, is how he treats B2 and stuff like that. And
I kind of got vibes that it was like his best friend growing up, and as Cassian kind of aged out of having a best friend be a droid, and B2 is like kind of outdated now, he can't quite leave him in the past because that would be heartless, but he's also like, I've kind of moved on from you.
Yeah. I love their relationship, but he's so sweet to him, and he just treats him like, you know, a person. He's not like mean to him. Like his first thing when B2 comes in is he gets down and he's like cleaning out scraps, things stuck in his gears.
And even when he's asking him to do things, he's like, well, first go home, get some rest, recharge, then worry about what I need you to do.
Yeah. So we're saying all this bad stuff about him, and obviously he murders a police officer on Morlana looking for his sister. in cold blood after killing another one brutally as well. You know,
Yeah.
super dark moment that sets off all the events of the series. Just this one moment where these police officers could have left him alone, but they didn't. And then Andor escalated it too far and killed both of them.
Well, that's kind of the redeeming quality there is even in the bar when they're kind of like talking trash and stuff, he's really trying not to disengage. He's really trying. And then when they assault him, he doesn't mean to kill one. One takes a bad fall, which when that happened, it's like that is very realistic. I mean, go on a news site right now and search for, guy dies accidentally in bar fight, you're going to find 10 things. I
Yeah,
mean, it's
no.
tragic, of course. I'm not downplaying it, but it
Yeah.
just felt so real. And then, like you said, the second killing was more the heartless, like, oh, okay, now he's making the choice.
Which I think at that point in the show, when he just point blank shoots a guy in the head, I'm like, oh, it's this kind of Star Wars. You know, Star Wars you don't really see a lot in live action.
That right there should have told me, like, if you're looking for the space whimsy, like, go back to Skeleton's Crew. It's not here.
Yeah. And thank goodness for something like Skeleton Crew and The Mandalorian. You know, like you have your whimsy there, you know.
Yeah, Mandalorian, I feel like it walks the line and does both.
Yeah.
Not saying one is better than the other. I forget the quote, but Sam Witwer had this amazing quote where it's like, well, that's why people love Star Wars, because you can have Andor shooting a cop in the head in the rain, and then you can have Ewoks dancing. Like, it's the same thing.
And that's the first Star Wars in a nutshell too. You know, there's so much rewatching the original trilogy this past year, there's so much dark stuff in that is out by the light stuff in it.
Especially for a kids movie.
Yeah. But I think the light in this show is really his relationship with people. And I think Brasso is another character that you really get to see him, you know, how Brasso treats him like a brother and a good friend is really sweet.
Even though Cassian's always screwing up, he's still like, okay, I got your alibi. I'll even add to the story. And he kind of does it in a way where it's a little tongue-in-cheek, where he's kind of like taking a shot at his friend. Like, you kind of got to be put in check a little bit, but I got your back.
Right. Yeah, I love that. And I love his relationship with one thing I was noticing this time with his relationship with Bix is that there's such chemistry between them. And that obviously plays into the plot with Tim eventually betraying Andor to the Corpos.
Right. And you could tell the second he does it, he's like, what have I done?
Yeah. But
he
also
acted impulsively and regrets it.
Yeah, I think you can see why Tim gets so jealous is because they're so close emotionally, personally, but then also how they're framed together. They're always blocked so close to each other so that like their faces are like.
That's a good catch, yeah.
And
then when it's her and him, they're always on opposite sides of the room. Like, even after they spent the night together, they don't wake up together. Like, it shows you that distance where she's kind of probably with him out of safety and convenience, but not because she really loves the guy.
Yeah, that's a really good. That was one thing I was noticing. But you voiced that perfectly. Yeah, I was noticing that this time, especially after Tim betrays Andor, there's that shot where Bix goes into the bedroom and Tim stays in the other room, and you just see him stand there like with this huge wall separating them.
Yeah, very intentional.
Yeah, very intentional, great visual storytelling in this show. I hate Tim though. Garbage dude. Like just
Well, yeah, I mean, like he should have confronted Andor himself, or even confronted his girlfriend and be like, what's going on with you two? Like, let's clear the air here. Not, I'm gonna turn you into the space Nazis. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, Tim sucks. Glad he's dead. Rest in hell, Tim.
I will say though, I didn't like him either. I didn't like that he turned on Andor, even though at this point Andor's very unlikable. But when he died, you still feel something for him. You're like, okay, he was kind of a jerk. Did he deserve to be gunned down in the street?
No.
Not really. He was just trying to stand up for the girl.
Yeah. Like unarmed dude. And I think that just shows and I think maybe that scene sucks because just to show the oppression of, obviously the Corpos aren't the direct Empire, but they are the Empire. That oppression.
Well, it's the early days. Yeah, they just haven't been enveloped into the bigger cause.
Yeah.
Taken over, assimilated, whatever word I need.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I love that. I don't love it, obviously it's very upsetting, but I love the
execution of it.
Yeah. It's really good. Yeah, no, I think these first three episodes do such a great job introducing, obviously, the characters, but like you said, the state of the galaxy, which is something I think Star Wars doesn't need to bother itself with because they are most of the time just fun adventure films.
Hmm.
But if you're going to add something to the lore, adding something in live action to what it was like living underneath the Empire is really fascinating to see. Um,
Yeah.
and you get a good idea of what it's like living under the Empire in this series, and especially in these first three episodes, you get a real feel for the world and the galaxy that we haven't seen before executed on this level. Um, and it really makes and I think what's interesting about these first three episodes that we don't see any typical Empire soldiers or ships or anything,
No.
but the presence of the Empire is felt.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. It's like a
and
shadow over everything.
yeah, yeah, and I think it's cool to see um, the fear everyone has all the time of just losing everything because of the Empire.
And that's something else that just feels so real. Like if you look at our country's history or Earth's history, like go back to World War II, where it was like increment things to just put these people down and then move into these areas and collect them and all the othering and stuff that was going on. It's just it feels almost too real, where it's sometimes hard to watch as a Star Wars show, but it makes you appreciate it that much more because you can still watch A New Hope and it has the big score and the swelling music and the excitement, but you know more what they're fighting against.
Yeah, exactly. I think Andor and Rogue One make A New Hope better in a lot of ways and more cathartic,
Yeah.
knowing what the Empire is actually. As a Star Wars fan, like I know, I like you're just watching these as movies or TV shows. They're very entertaining on their own, but as a Star Wars fan, it's very rewarding to experience all of these together.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
and just to see it as one story. Um, but no, going back to the history thing, I've listened to a lot of interviews with Gilroy and well, the both Gilroys, Dan Gilroy, Tony Gilroy, and I can't remember the other writer's name. But a big part of Tony Gilroy, what he was bringing to this show was real history, real ideas, and things like that. And a lot of what Andor's story is based off of as a revolutionary is based off of like Russian Revolution times, living under the Tsar in Russia. We'll probably see even more of that in season two. From the visuals of the Gorman massacre, like that is like straight out of like early 20th century Russian history, just in the
Yeah, yeah.
trailers. Um, and apparently Cassian, a lot of his stories are based off of like, I don't know, take this as you will, but like a lot of like young Joseph Stalin type stuff before he became a dictator, sort of like when he was a revolutionary. A lot of it's there. A lot of it's the revolution in Algiers, like that kind of stuff. A lot of it is in. That's a lot of what influences the story in this show, and obviously, like yeah, Nazi Germany, etc. All of that is baked in there. World War II, like visuals and things, but a lot of it is also just deep cut early 20th century revolutionary stuff. It's really cool to listen to if you're interested in the influences. Gilroy is
Yeah, I
very
gotta
well
find
read.
that.
Yeah,
And that fits right in tonally because even George Lucas himself said in many interviews that he based the Rebel Alliance on revolutionaries against the Empire. And the example he gave, because of his age, was the Vietnam War, where
yeah,
we were the Empire going in and they were kind of the rebellion. But then he also said the American Revolution, where our little upstart country was going against like the greatest empire in the world at the time. And it's all there. All the pieces are there. It's pretty amazing.
yeah. And then to put a character who does not want to rebel in all of that, like that's the
Yeah.
crazy part. Just a guy who does not care. He just wants to, just wants to live his life. And so starting him down the path of realizing that there's one way out of, the crappy situation that he's in, and that's to rebel. And that's great because he tries to go live a quiet life after every arc, and the Empire always finds him. Oppression always finds him. So he realizes there's no avoiding a revolution or being a part of a revolution, and that starts here with like Luthen basically just preaching at him, saying like, "There's like if you really want to have a good life, like you're gonna have to fight for it.
Right.
So you
Yeah.
have to
There's
have
no way to walk away from this one.
right, yeah." Like, as much as you want to be out of this fight, you're in it because you've killed a cop. It's like you're not going to get away with this
Well,
one.
you killed a cop, you're stealing from the Empire. Now they're here hunting you. You have to take action. Like, it's getting worse whether you want it to or not.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you're already part of this.
And I think a lot of it's also him realizing what he wants to fight for. He wants it. He's obviously in it for himself, but I think it's also him trying to deny the fact that he wants to fight for the people around him. And coming back to, the third episode has another line that's repeated throughout the show is Andor saying to Brasso before he goes to meet Luthen is, I'm going to find a way back, because he can't just leave everybody. Like, he is deep down inside someone who fights for other people and loves other people. So he can't deny that part of himself. That is what will get him to rebel. It's his friends and family. And that goes back to when he was a kid. We haven't really talked much about the flashbacks as a child.
Right, which I love how they handled those.
Me too.
Before we move on from the rebellion thing real quick, though, I just want to say I feel like all the pieces are there. I forget his adopted mother's name. I'm sure you got it.
Marva, it's the best character.
Okay. I'm so bad with names. I could have watched this 10 minutes ago and not remember.
Character, though. So
she's so good, yeah.
Yeah.
But I feel like all of the pieces of rebellion are in his head because of her. The way she talks to him, she's just kind of like, he'll get there.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's so cool. I have to say again, like, a lot of great women in Star Wars. Like, this show gave you like 10 out of the 15, Like,
right.
you've got Marva, you've got Bix, you've got Deidre coming up, you've got Vel, Mon Mothma, Cinta. So many great female characters in this show with so much dimension and depth. Love it to death. But Marva, especially, just this person that is, like Andor, like I said with Serial, he has these shades of people he can be and will eventually be in Rogue One. And Marva is one of those. And it's so cool to see his influence on her. But also, I think, this is something I was thinking about, it ties into the flashbacks. You see, this might be weird, but you see a lot of Jyn Erso in Marva as well. You see a lot of Jyn Erso in the girl that Andor follows as a kid, is this sort of leader, leading the charge into the fray.
I didn't even catch that. That's amazing. Yeah, you're exactly right, because he wasn't even really supposed to be going on the mission. I guess we should probably back up and explain what that is.
Yes,
but she's the one who kind of gives him the nod to go. So basically, the flashbacks take you back to Andor's childhood, where it was more of a primitive planet. They didn't have any technology or anything. All of the adults were they taken as slaves, it looked like?
No, they say in the one part episode, it's a very brief moment. Andor's trying to get off planet, and he's talking to the guy behind the glass, and he's got the little alien friend.
Yeah, he's trying to bribe him to smuggle him off.
Yeah, he says something about how Kenari was a mining colony, and all of the adults were killed in an Imperial mining accident, or at the time it had been a Republic mining accident.
Right.
And so all these...
Oh, right, so it was the Republic. Yeah, I thought the Empire took them as slaves, put them in the mines, then the accident killed them, but it probably was the only work they had.
It was before that. Like, all the adults were wiped out in a mining accident, and all the children were sort of left abandoned. So I think in Rogue One, when Andor talks about him being in the fight since he was 6 years old, he's not 6 in the flashbacks. I think that's just when his parents died.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, when he was 6. And then
he didn't know the fight started, but it had.
Yeah, and I think in Rogue One, with perspective, realizing that the Republic put him there, the Republic that became the Empire, he's been fighting against them or trying to survive against their oppression since he was a little kid. But no, it's like, the colony that he lived in as a child is so beautiful, because it's just this like communal space where everybody shares everything. And yes, like, since he was a kid, he's just been a scrounger, clearly, because that's all he's had. That's how he's had to survive his whole life.
That's all they could do, yeah.
Yeah. And you meet his little sister there too, is the sweetest little kid in the world, and he clearly loves her, and she loves him. So when he goes off on the scavenging mission to check out the ship that crashes on the planet, it's so heartbreaking to watch now knowing that he never gets back there to his little sister.
Right, which ties into the line you were just talking about, where I'm going to find a way back.
Yeah, he's always trying to find a way back. Yeah, so I think it's going to be, I'm hoping season 2 closes that loop. Sorry to go off on another thing. I hope we find out what happened to his sister.
I'm sure we will. That would kind of be bad storytelling if they just didn't address it.
Yeah, I kind of wish they had done more. They talked more about that in this series, which I think telling people going in, I'm assuming people have watched it, or if they haven't watched it, I think that's one of the letdowns of this season, is that is kind of dropped. It's brought up briefly in episode 7. But the sister storyline is kind of dropped in favor of a narrative that is propelling Andor in a different direction. So it's never like he goes out of his way to avoid talking about his sister, but that is one thing that I wish we got more of in this first season.
I feel like it's done intentionally, though, because if you go back again to that one line, I'm going to find a way back, I think there's 2 reads to it, where one, he's always promising people, I'm going to figure it out, I'm going to make it right, I'm going to find a way back, but he also has to accept that part of your life is done. That happened. The only way is forward.
There's only one way out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, one way out. You have to go forward.
Yeah. So however they close it off, I think it'll be sad regardless, because we know where Andor ends up. But, I'll be interested to see what happens.
Yeah.
What do you think of their language and them not, no subtitles or anything for
that? Was
Andor
actually the thing I wanted to bring up most. I thought that was handled so perfectly. I feel like far too often in shows, movies, I'm not even talking just Star Wars, but just in general now, if things aren't like spelled out in crayon and like repeated exposition 6 times, people think that it's a plot hole or the script is bad or whatever. It's like, no, show, don't tell. It's a visual medium. We don't need to know exactly what they're saying. We got it.
Yeah. No, I couldn't have said it better myself. I think one thing I loved about it showing and not telling is how much of the backstory is explained through the kids' costumes, and contrasting it with the colors on Ferrix. They're the same colors. Mm-hmm. So that these kids are wearing the uniforms of their parents, which are like these industrial uniforms, like sliced up into their like makeshift uniforms, because it's the same type of material and colors that all the workers dismantling the ships on Ferrix are wearing. Right. I love that. That's such a great detail right there.
Yeah, it is a really cool crossover. Just all the tones, every thematic tone, the production just absolutely nailed.
Absolutely. I was it's really cool to watch the behind the scenes stuff. Disney doesn't put out enough for the behind the scenes of this show, so you have to kind of dig to find anything. And at Celebration, they had a really good panel with a lot of the production heads. Luke Hull, the production designer, talked about how he and the Gilroys and the other writers were all working together. Like the design process and the script writing process was almost happening simultaneously. Or Gilroy was really good about communicating what he wanted from the show to Luke Hull, the production designer, and then also to, and I can't remember his name, but the costume designer. He's never worked on Star Wars before, so this is like his first time. He does like a lot of like very like fashion forward stuff normally, and he his like input as well. Like again, he and Luke Hull and Tony Gilroy all worked really closely together in the development of the visual language of this show, right at the like story level, which is so cool. And it's same with Nicholas Britell's score. A lot of that was being written while the scripts were being written, so that everything was informing each other while they were doing it. It's kind of like how the Dune movies are made now, or how like Interstellar was made. It's like there's a commonality here, and even like original Star Wars, like all like when everything is being done together, it feeds off each other, and it makes for so much more of a cohesive and satisfying piece of art when you have all of these people on the same page.
No matter how many creators are involved, if there's a singular vision, the end product is better. It's there's no way it's not.
Yeah, it's so great. And then also I think it helps to have Gilroy be so experienced as a filmmaker and a storyteller, that he could come in and effectively communicate what he wanted from the show. And that's how he got the show at the beginning too, is that Kathleen Kennedy sent him the original story treatment for this show from a different writer, and Gilroy's sort of, she asked like what his take was or what his take would be based off of this pitch. And he apparently mapped out everything in like a couple paragraphs. And that's how he got the show, is just how effective he was at writing out what he wanted to see. I don't know how great he is to work with, but I think that's pretty cool, you know? Like,
yeah, well, I mean, the results, I think, speak for themselves, even if he is a little bit difficult, as long as he's not a total monster. Let him keep doing his thing, because the results are working. Even like the most diehard Star Wars is dead, Disney killed it people like Andor.
Yeah. Or at least can't argue that it's not really well made. You know,
sure. Okay.
even
Yeah.
if it's
Fair
not
enough.
for them.
Yeah. Maybe they don't like it personally, but you can't say it's bad. It's not objectively bad.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I think, I think the show sort of stands out amongst all the Star Wars shows for how unique it is in its voice and vision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also one that when they were making it, when they announced it, I was kind of like, why? Like, we saw the end of his story in Rogue One. Why is this important? And then when you get into it, you're like, oh, this is so important. For the things we said right when we started the recording was the tone of it, getting to live in the world, seeing how it is for regular people, and then bringing in, I mean, Mon Mothma's story is my favorite part of Andor. It's just because she goes with the rebellion all the way through the second Death Star.
Yeah. Yeah. And beyond. Like,
yeah, and beyond. And she creates the actual Rebel Alliance.
Yeah. And to see, again, not to skip ahead too far, we'll get into more Mon Mothma in next couple episodes.
Yeah, she hasn't even been introduced. We're not sticking to the first 3 episode thing.
But to tie back to these episodes, Luthen's first sort of call to action for Andor about, don't you want to fight these bastards for real?
Yeah.
Like and it's his call to every character in the show, everybody's living these double lives, these lies, to try to get by, to try to survive, and doing their own little rebellions. And now he's giving them the options. She's giving everybody the chance to finally do something, to finally stand up and make them pay for their oppression.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so, that moment gets you so pumped up. Luthen staring down the barrel of Andor's gun, saying, there's something bigger than even my life being at danger here right now. It's like everyone's lives, and only way to save everyone is to rebel. Yeah.
And that scene in the 3rd episode, I love that the show is letting the story take its time to unfold in every aspect. It's not the first episode, and by the end, Andor's like, okay, I'm a rebel now, and like they're running off to adventure. Even by the 3rd episode, when we just are introduced to Luthen, they talk about him in the 2nd, but he doesn't come in until, I think, the tail end of the 2nd into the 3rd. And there's that big warehouse scene where they're talking, like you said, he's staring down the barrel of his gun, unflinching. He's not concerned.
No.
And it really shows the difference between him looking at the big picture and Cassian unable to see the big picture because he just wants his immediate reward for the stolen star mapping thing that he had. And he's trying to go back and he's risking his life. And Luthen's like, it doesn't matter anymore. Like, we got to get out of here. Like, we have other things to do.
Yeah. There's one way out. I know.
One way out. It keeps coming up. Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's just one way out, and and then another thing they keep saying is you got to climb now. Everything is climbing, right? Like you can't go back down to scrounging and scavenging. You have to start climbing now.
Yeah. We're past that.
Yeah. And I think I love the intentional buildup to the final, like the climax of the arcs. And that happens in each arc has like a climactic moment that it builds to.
Yeah.
It feels very cinematic. And that's another thing Gilroy's talked about, where he sort of structured these episodes as movies,
Yep.
and like different acts of a film. So that kind of makes the episode structures feel weird, but it is sort of very satisfying when you get to the end and all the action, all the big climactic payoff is just in this final one. It's really fun to look at the IMDb ratings for each episode, because like episode 1 will be like a 7 out of 10, episode 2 will be like a 7.5, and then episode 3 will be like a 9, that kind of thing, because it's like it's this payoff to these like this slow build up. And I think as a TV show it sort of weirds people out because that's not how TV is usually structured. But again, as streaming, it kind of works. It works really well. If you're not watching it week to week or whatever, it works pretty good for me.
Well, I think that's why their decision for season 2 is to release them in 3-episode blocks, because you're getting the 3-act structure, time jump, 3-act structure, time jump.
Yeah. I like that idea too. I'm excited for a Star Wars movie a week in April.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when you know it's going to be this quality.
Yes, exactly. But man, okay, now we're just going to go bro talk. That action scene in the 3rd episode is so awesome.
It's kind of what we were talking about with like Cyril being like the true believer but not quite capable villain, and that's all getting so out of hand. And then Andor's just trying to sell some black market goods and gets roped into the fight, and it goes from like local police, they do gun a guy down, and it's sad, but it's one shot, it's one guy, and then there's like exploding vehicles and car bombs, and it's like the IRA. It's just chaos in the streets.
It is. And yeah, I love that like Luthen shows up and immediately is like, oh yeah, I planted bombs everywhere, so we're just gonna start killing people now. It's like, you killed 1 cop, I'm gonna kill like 5, so keep up,
and destroy your shuttle, and we're going to steal this car and use it as a diversion and blow it up over there. Well, like, it gets crazy real quick.
And it's funny that Mosk is like no half measures, and so is Cyril, like no half measures. So they bring 12 guys with them, and you're like, oh, that's a bit overkill,
Yeah.
And it shows how inept all of them are, because like their first victims are like a woman. They beat up Bix, which is disgusting. They try to bully Marva, the old lady, and a droid.
Yeah, old sick lady with a dying droid. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're already like, yeah, just kill all these guys. They suck. That's
another Star Wars theme, is there is zero question on who the good guy is and who the bad guy is, even if the good guys are doing some kind of bad things.
Yeah. And, but also they're all out of all the corpos are out of their depth. And,
yes.
Yeah. And, I love that, Cyril is so ill-equipped that at the end, when he has to take leadership, he just can't, like when everything's gone to like just down the crapper. All he can do is just sit there in shock, because he just thought, this was his moment. This was his time to do the right thing,
Well, yeah, he thought he was going to strut in, marching in formation, arrest a guy, and everyone's going to cheer, and he's going to go out the hero and show his commanding officer, like, I should have your job now. And instead it's like, there's how many civilian deaths, how many millions in property damage? Like, what did you do?
Yeah, no, he just messed up completely. And then on top of it, gets humiliated by Andor before that, because Andor lets him live, and ties him up and uses him as a distraction before the next distraction.
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't even get like the martyr's death.
Yeah. I'm wondering, what do you think? Do you think that Andor should have killed Cyril in that moment when he had him, like Luthen told him to? Do you think that'll come back to bite them? Or do you think Cyril will just sort of be an ineffective villain going into season 2?
I think it has to come back in a way, but I don't think it's going to come back to bite them, because the message can't be to the good guys, you should execute people once they're beaten. Mm-hmm. Him killing the cop in the beginning set him off on this really bad trajectory. I mean, it does make him a hero eventually, but a lot of bad things happen because he killed that one cop, because he was doing what he wasn't supposed to do. So I think it has to be more of a growing moment where, okay, I killed this other guy. You expect he's going to do it again, but instead he shows some mercy and walks away. And that might be more of a sign of the Andor that we have in Rogue One, even though the movie opens with him, oh, this other rebel spy with me can't escape. I'm going to kill him so he can't be interrogated. But then when he meets Jin, he realizes, like, this is not the way. There is a better way. I don't have to be kind of a monster. You don't become the monster you're fighting.
Yeah, exactly. And you also don't kill the people that, there are, the ends don't always justify the means.
Right.
Yeah. I like that. I think that's what that's what Rogue One pretty much says.
Yeah. Well, that's like
or
Saw Gerrera is the embodiment of that, where even the
yeah,
Rebel Alliance is like, yeah, we're on the same side, but we cannot be associated with you. Like, you are too much.
yeah, yeah. I like but I do like that everything has a consequence to it,
Yes.
throughout the story, because Cyril's knowledge of what happens does actually come into play later down the line when Deidre is introduced. So him being alive through it all does matter by the end. But also, it's just a great character study of a little loser fascist, just
Right.
making
Yeah.
fun of demystifying the Empire completely. Just this. They're all just a bunch of whiny, entitled little boys. Like
Yeah.
that's all they
Bullies.
are.
Yeah. They're schoolyard bullies given way too
Yep.
much power. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's yeah. I like though that final ending of I love Marva's first, like, that's what a reckoning sounds like. Again.
Yeah. Oh, she has so many great speeches. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
obviously the one at the end of the first season, but yeah,
Yeah.
just when they're all banging and all the guards are freaking out in her house, and she was like, "Well, you don't have to worry now. You got to worry when it gets quiet." And it's like, oh
Mm-hmm.
no, what's coming?
Yeah. Which again, very Star Wars, just
Yeah.
saying like you guys like and they talk about it later in the show, but it's their grasp, their totalitarian grasp is very weak because there are so many more people. And I think one thing I was thinking about with this show is there's a repeated number throughout the series, and I think a lot of that's just iconography and things like that that's baked into Star Wars. But 12 is a number that comes up throughout the show. I think of 3 examples. There are 12 episodes. This episode, there are 12 guards. In One Way Out's episode, there are no more than 12 guards on each thing. A repeated number just to show that there are not a lot of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the Empire spreads itself thin because it knows it's got its fear and its violence to keep people in control, but there are not a lot of them. So her moment of saying like, this is what a reckoning sounds like because there are too many of them out there. You're not going to be able to kill all of them,
Right.
because you are just 12 and they are like legion, these, and that's something the show sets up right from the start, is how close knit this community on Ferrix is, how close knit Andor's little tribe is, because later when the leader of Andor's child tribe gets killed, that guy just gets swarmed immediately by the whole the whole community.
Oh yeah, he gets 20 darts in him straight away.
Yeah, because there aren't there's not a lot of them. Like they're ill-equipped because there's just not enough.
Yeah, you might be bigger, you
people.
might technically be stronger, you might have the technology, the weaponry, it does not matter.
There's more of them. Like there's more of everyone that ready to just be free. And it's so good. I'm going to say that a lot. It's just so good.
Yeah. And I'm going to say this a lot. Classic Star Wars themes.
Classic Star Wars. Yeah.
The entire Empire is, you think you're the toughest thing around and you underestimate at every turn.
Yep. And that's something Andor says in his speech. They're just fat and satisfied. They don't think we're going to rebel. They don't think we're just going to walk in and steal their stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, right. That's right. Because he talks about that with the thing he's trying to sell before he even becomes a believer in the cause. Is he's like, they don't care. They're not looking for a single guy doing something. They just don't see it.
No. Yeah. And nobody's listening, which again, they say later, they just act big, act tough, but they're like Cyril Karn in the end. They don't have anything.
And also, to connect it to Rogue One again, when it shows Rogue One, the Empire is fighting itself just as much as it's fighting anyone resisting it, with like Tarkin and just totally blanked on his name. I just had it.
Krennic.
Krennic, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Wow, that was bad. But yeah, Krennic and Tarkin are spending more time going after each other and fighting for resources than they are solving the problem or securing Scarif or doing whatever they should be doing. Or in the Bad Batch, the same kind of thing happened with Hemlock and Tarkin, where they're fighting over the Empire's pretty much unlimited resources. It's like, what are you arguing about?
Vader and the Emperor. I'm rereading like Charles Soule's run on Darth Vader right now. But
so good.
It's very good. But it's also in Kieran Gillen's run on Darth Vader too. It's the main conflict in all those comics, and Greg Pak's, all the Darth Vader comics. It's just the primary protagonist of that series, if you could call him, is Darth Vader, and the primary antagonist is the Emperor.
Yeah.
Because they're like, he's just always scared that the Emperor is going to replace him, because that's what Siths do. They can't take someone being in charge of them.
The way they developed that Vader-Emperor relationship with all the expanded media, the books and the comics and stuff, it is such like a textbook abusive relationship. It is genius the way that it's unfolded with so many writers taking a piece of it.
Yeah, and now with I've not read the new issue. I guess it's coming out on Wednesday, but the next one of Legacy of Vader with Kylo Ren.
Okay.
And the first issue was very much going into that as well, but it's not Kylo Ren with a Snoke or anything like that. It's with like the legacy of these people that he has to like compete with and has to fight against while the resistance is trying to reform. Yeah.
Yeah, I got to get into I'm way behind on the comics because I always wait for the big thick trades to come out. And
smart. I'm way behind too. I'm kind of waiting for the High Republic to end just so I can just binge everything for that. Yeah.
I was moving along good with the first phase of the High Republic, the books, and Vernestra Rowe is my favorite character, and I didn't like her representation in the Acolyte. I didn't like her, trying to cover stuff up and things like that. It didn't feel true to my vision of her from the books. And then one of the books, I don't want to give spoilers, but there is a lot of deaths you don't see coming, and I'm like, I got to take a break from this. I don't know who to root for anymore.
I'm reading through. I'm so behind on books too. I've actually not read any of the new stuff since Disney acquired, but I've been listening to Alphabet Squadron.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Holy crap. Alphabet Squadron was great. And now I'm listening to the second book, Shadow something. It's also really good.
Yeah, I forget the subtitle of it.
Yeah.
I haven't done the third one yet, but I did do the first two. Yeah, I really like those.
Very similar to Andor as well. Yeah, go ahead.
It reminded me of like the X-Wing series from Legends.
Yeah, which I've never read those. I need to read the X-Wing series.
I haven't read them since middle school, but I remember really liking them.
Yeah, but it's similar thing. Yeah, no, Star Wars is full of just pointing out how bullies are spending as much time bullying each other as they are bullying the people underneath them, and that's how you win. Yeah. Yeah, that's how Galen Erso gets in there. That's how Andor gets in there. They just don't expect those people to not be affected by the bullying.
Yeah, I mean, the very first movie, A New Hope, it's a single man starfighter. The Empire did not see it as a threat. So even when they found the flaw in the design, they were like, yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, or like, it's if you've watched like Spaced with like Simon Pegg.
Just once, but yeah.
The Chaos Theory episode where they talk about Star Wars, and it's just the one moment where the guy was like, "Oh, that's that's an escape pod. There are no life signs on it. Just let it go." And that's the catalyst
to the whole thing.
Who has the plans on him,
right?
They're so fat and satisfied.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, Leia, I think it's one of her first lines. Maybe it's like her third line in the entire franchise. The more you tighten your grip, the more it's going to slip through your fingers. It's like,
yes,
the stronger you think you are, the weaker you are.
Yeah. Which I think everybody needs to hear all the time.
Yeah.
I think Andor gives you that. Star Wars gives you that. Just, find your community and rebel in what way you can. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Take care of those around you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, man, such a good show. That music too, man. The Andor score is on has been on my top listens the last 3 years.
Nice.
My favorite track is the Past and Present Suite, which is how episode 3 ends. It's just this beautiful building orchestral score. And you see the juxtaposition of Andor going off with Luthen, to be a part of something bigger.
Yep.
And little Andor being adopted by Marva and his father, Keith Andor. Those guys are, just putting in putting his life in the, again, very Star Wars-y perspective of chapters, of moments in a saga. All of it matters, which I think is cool that you do pretty much these first 3 episodes do the Star Wars prequels and the original trilogy in 3 episodes where you have everything at once,
Yeah, that's true. Playing out at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. While being a prequel to a prequel. And
yeah.
yeah,
We're going to get lost in the prequel world, but
yeah,
no, those are great points. Yeah. It's just so strong across the board. I was even, it might sound horrible, but I was even looking for things to critique. Not like I want to hate watch anything. Like if there's something in Star Wars I don't like, I just move on to find something I do like. Because
right.
real life is hard enough. I'm not going to go into my fantasy world and be like, well, I also don't like this thing.
Yeah.
I was like, well, just to try to be objective, what are some things I don't like about this series? And the only thing, and it's not even like a real sticking point, is what I said earlier about there is no real sense of whimsy and adventure. Or not, no, there is a big sense of adventure. There's no sense of like whimsy and fun, like Harry Potter-esque magic. But there's so much discovery and world building and all that. Like, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. I think the closest you get is in the next arc with the Eye, which I'm really excited to talk about. You have some real wonder there that is kind of magical.
That's true. Yeah.
But it's still very, like, they explain it to where it's like, you know, it kind of takes away all the whimsy and the magic of it. But you see the culture around Aldhani, you know, worshiping it like magic. Yeah.
But I also, even though I just said it was my only kind of complaint, in some ways I also like that because I like, I love Jedi, lightsabers, the Force. I love all the mythology about it. It was my favorite part about Rebels is when they get into like the real thick mythology of the Force and the Mortis gods and the world between worlds. But there is more to Star Wars than Jedi. So to do a story completely devoid of them, even in Rogue One, there were no Jedi, and you had, you know, Chirrut and his buddy who were guardians of the wills. They weren't Force sensitive themselves, but they were obviously in tune and believed in it. Andor doesn't even go that far. So I do appreciate the more sci-fi than fantasy angle. So I guess even my minor complaint is not a complaint. It was just an observation.
Yeah. My minor complaint is some of the, like, you know, just some VFX stuff, you know, some green screen, some things like that. I
see that.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. I mean,
no, sorry. The one funny thing that I think about is the end part where Cassian and Luthen are on the speeder bike, and that's sort of, you can tell it's like a green screen behind them.
Yeah.
At Celebration, the Celebration panel, Diego Luna talked about how frustrating that scene was to do because it was the most exciting thing in the show of them riding on the speeder bike. And he's like, but we were in this like green void and, you know, had air blowing at us. And I have, you know, to sit uncomfortably close to the Skarsgård while he like holds on to me on this like fake mechanical horse, that kind of thing, you know. And
it looks the coolest in the show, and it was the lamest thing to shoot.
Yeah, no, like and that there are things like that do stick out, and it's a TV show, you know, you can kind of feel the budget constraints there. It's still like really good looking for a TV show, but there are budget constraints.
Yeah, well, I've seen the complaints about things like that. Oh, I could see the green screen, or I could see the effects weren't quite, you know, realistic enough, or, oh, they clearly shot this on the volume. I even saw people complaining that like, oh, well, most of Andor, the sets are like brick. Like, we have bricks on Earth. It's like, okay, well, Naboo was shot in Italy and Luke's farm was shot in Tunisia. Like, those are real places. Like,
yeah,
the way I see it is, if having the effects be 90% or 95% perfect and we get more Star Wars, sign me up. Like, I'm fine with that.
No, I think and the story is so strong, and the visuals are really strong too. Them shooting on location with real sets and real places is so cool.
You feel it. It's more tactile.
It's so tactile. I love it to death. And how they use the volume in this show is really fascinating. And I have some insight. We can talk about that in the next couple episodes as well.
Yeah, sure.
But there is a very sparing use of the volume in this show. And they use it very cleverly, like to where you don't notice it at certain times. Like they're the obvious things, like with spaceships and stuff like that. And, you know, but it's, like the VFX is so cool, and there's a very unique approach to it. It borrows the visual language from Rogue One, where the camera is always placed in somewhere that a camera could be if it was real, you know? So you don't see the camera ever do anything crazy, or like, you know, like I love the opening shot of Revenge of the Sith, but a camera can never do that in real life, you know?
Sure, yeah.
There's none of that in this show. Like there's always like the camera is always in a place where it could be realistically.
That's
It's
cool because like subconsciously, as the viewer, you put yourself in the show easier.
exactly, and I think that's what makes Rogue One so good as well. Like why the effects in that movie hold up really well too.
Yeah,
Yeah. But no,
that's
I don't
cool.
have many. I was trying to think. I came in with the same thing. Like I should probably say something critical about the show at
Right.
some point, but
It's tough. It's
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 really
about
tough.
as perfect as a show can get.
Really is. Yeah.
Because we did talk a little bit about how, well, the second season for sure, they said 3 episode arcs. This one, almost unintentionally, you do get the 3 episode arcs, but they still feel like episodes. And I think that's a lot stronger. And again, this is more of a wider complaint about streaming and the age of that instead of just Star Wars. But if it's just a 6 hour movie that you're putting credits in between some scenes, it doesn't feel like a show. It feels like a low budget movie that you cut up, where if there's a clear, definitive, yes, the 3 episodes give you an arc, yes, the 12 episodes give you an arc, but you also get the 3 episode arc every 35 to 40 minutes, it feels so much stronger. And the only one that was kind of abrupt was episode 1 to 2 carries over directly with the kids in the flashback. But they
Yeah.
were also putting you there, and then you got that cliffhanger where if you didn't have the next episode to the next week, you'd be like, what is going on with these kids?
Yeah, I agree. I think that was the one this time. I think every rewatch, those are the ones that stick out the most as like, oh, this would have been a weird place to end it week to week.
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, but episode two's ending is so good as
Yes.
an ending to an episode.
That's what made me have that thought that I just
Yeah.
went over. Yeah.
Yeah, episode 2 to 3 is really good. And I think going forward, from what I remember, there's very little like abrupt endings to the show. There's always a moment where you feel like, okay, this is the end of Act 1, or this is the midpoint of the story. That kind of thing where you're like, okay, this feels natural, like to stop here, continue on next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely watched shows where that does. I mean, not to pick on the Acolyte too much, but to pick on the Acolyte, like that show was rough with its like, why did we end here?
Yeah,
like
a lot of the endings were just like,
Yeah.
and we'll just stop for the day. And it was like, well, that didn't really tie anything up.
Yeah, I don't think Andor is as good as Skeleton Crew at telling a larger story and then having it split up so well into episode chunks. That
I
I
can
think
see
has
that.
been Mandalorian is like built to be like a week to week adventure kind of show with like a very loose
Yeah,
tying it
especially
all
the first
together.
season. Yeah.
Yeah, but Skeleton Crew I think has been the best so far at doing an episodic structure, weaving a narrative
The
so that
larger-
you are moving the story forward, but you are also telling a complete story each episode.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Mandalorian season 1 was very adventure of the week. And of course, there's the through line of him and the child. And then as it went on, it became a little bit more the season is the arc, which I still liked. I have no complaints
Same.
about the Mandalorian because I love all those characters. But yeah, Skeleton Crew really did nail it. We're like, this is a week to week TV show. It's all fun. It's all adventure. And here's the wider plot. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think Andor, we're kind of spoiled with a lot of Star Wars as Star Wars fans. I get the burnout, I think that's the thing I wanted to say. Like I'm trying to build hype with my friends for Andor season 2, but it's like, yeah, but we had to sit through like Acolyte, Ahsoka, Mandalorian season 3, and Skeleton Crew and Bad Batch. There's a lot out there for maybe more casual fans that I'm kind of scared, like trying to, like that Andor won't get the hype it deserves because people have just had so much these last couple of years.
That could be because the casual viewer is not like us where we're counting the minutes to when we get a new Star Wars project. They're not reading the
Right.
books to hold themselves over in between. Because
Yeah.
I'll have friends that come over and they're like, oh, did you try the Skeleton Crew show? Like, I haven't really heard anything about it. I'm like, yeah, it's great. You should watch it.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, like, what is it? Where does it fit? I'm like, just watch it for what it is. And so
Yeah.
to get them to come onto a season 2 if they didn't watch season 1 and then they missed the last 4 shows, are they going to feel like, what's the point?
And it seems like Disney's trying to remedy that with season 2. Like yesterday they dropped the first 3 episodes of season 1 of Andor on YouTube for free.
Oh, that's cool. I
And-
saw it was on Hulu now.
Yeah, it's on Hulu now, and it's on you can watch the first 3 episodes for free. And so I think they're really trying to get people in on this show. I feel like it's Kathleen Kennedy's like last sort of and she's really proud of this show. At Celebration, it was so cool to see her. Like, she was a part of every Andor panel that she could be a part of, because you could tell she really loved working on this one.
Right.
Not that she doesn't love working on all of them.
She wants to hit like a big win before she steps down. So maybe
I think this is the big win. So I think she's also trying to push this show like Disney is, where they're like, yeah, like this is why we should still make Star Wars stuff, is Andor, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand people's complaints overall with the franchise. Maybe a lot of the stories weren't for them, whatever. I think it gets too harsh a criticism a lot of the time, but that's my personal opinion. But I don't think it's dead, because it's only going to take an Andor and then a follow-up to get everyone back on board.
Exactly. I think so. And I think I also just have to, when I get worried, like, I'm like, but, you know, I get, you know, not wanting to watch Skeleton Crew, but Andor's the best. You got to check this one out. If you're going to get like, if you could just get over your fatigue for 2 seconds and watch Andor, you know, that doesn't work very often, I guess. So whatever.
No, it doesn't. And especially if people watched one that they really didn't care for.
Yeah.
Because I was super hyped for The Acolyte, and I talked a lot of my casual friends into watching it, and they got 3 episodes in. They're like, why do you like Star Wars? And I was like, well, it's not the best representation. I mean,
yeah.
I don't want to pile on a, you know, kick a dead horse, but.
Yeah. Yeah. And I liked Acolyte, so it's not like, I mean, I'll pick on it, but it's not, I didn't think it was the worst.
I liked bits, but I also, we could do a whole Acolyte conversation at some point, because I would like to get into it objectively and talk about the bad, and also acknowledge that there's good.
The lightsaber stuff. Yes. That's all you have to say.
The villain. I will rewatch the series solely for the villain.
He's not a villain in my book. I'm like, this story is just pretty much telling me he's the hero. So I'm like, yeah.
That's cool. A good point. Yeah. He was a guy who was wronged, who's trying to make things right for himself. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, Andor, though, endlessly rewatchable for me. Try to introduce it to as many people as can tolerate sitting with me being like, did you like it?
Yeah. You're sitting there watching them instead of watching the show.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, it's I'm really excited to get into the next arc.
Is episode 4 the train heist?
Yeah, episode 4, 5, and 6 is the Aldhani heist. Yeah.
Okay, because that episode with the actual train part, I talked to you about before we hit record, for people who are still hanging in after an hour of us talking about Andor. I had only watched it when it was new, and again now I tried to get my wife into it, because she's watched even all the cartoons. But this one was so dark. She's like, that's not really what I care about Star Wars for. I want to see the fun.
Right. So I've tried showing my partner a couple of times. She needs some fun too. Yeah. So she liked Acolyte a lot because of how light and like CW it was.
Yeah, my wife was kind of the same thing. I was like, well, what was his? Why did he care about the girl so much? Why did he do that? And she's like, does it matter?
Yeah. And my partner loved Skeleton Crew because it was just so much fun.
Yep, she likes Skeleton. My wife likes Skeleton Crew a lot too.
Yeah. This one's hard to get people on board with, because if you don't take Star Wars seriously, like it might be a bit of a hurdle to get over when they're like, I'm like, no, this is as real as it gets.
That's another one of those things where it's not a complaint, because I like it and dislike it at the same time, where if you changed a handful of words, it's not a Star Wars show. You could easily remove it and just have it be its own thing, which I think is a compliment and a bit of a jab to it.
Well, isn't that Filoni says anything can be a Star Wars story? You know?
Well, I mean, Skeleton Crew is a perfect example. Again, if you change a handful of words, it's just a kids in space adventure.
Yeah. And I think this show uses the universe to its benefit as well. Like, I think it does, like I said, the stuff with the Empire, it really does a good job fitting into the lore that way.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm exaggerating a little bit when I say a few words.
It does, though.
Star Wars.
But no, you're right, though. Like, I think and we can, you cut me off whenever. Sorry, I could talk about it.
No, it's fine. The dog's just.
Yeah. My dog's left me alone pretty much to this whole thing. The thing I like about this show is, it is like a political thriller, at its heart. And I love political thrillers. And I think Gilroy writing the Bourne movie, like the first 2 Bourne movies and the fourth one, it feels like those movies a lot. And still love those movies. but it also feels like 70s conspiracy thrillers like 3 Days of the Condor, Parallax View. There's even like the bar scene at the beginning is like is a scene from Parallax View, almost exactly.
I haven't seen that. I'll have to watch.
Oh, it's great.
Homework.
And Warren Beatty in that looks like Andor, except without the beard. So it's just like, you know, it's cool to see. And I had a thought. I was tying it back to Star Wars. Those were the movies that were big before, you know, Star Wars was big. Like if you look at everything in the 70s leading up to it, you know, we obviously have the prestigious films in the back of our heads like The Godfather and Woody Allen stuff, whatever, you know, that kind of thing. It's like, well, you have
separate the art from the artist on that one.
Yeah, like you have stuff like that, obviously, but you look at that decade, and it is just all like, you know, things like 3 Days of the Condor, China Syndrome, French Connection, things like that. You know, all these very like heavy mystery thriller, political thriller type movies, and it's so cool. Yeah, it's cool to see Star Wars kind of come full circle where it's homaging the stuff that the decade that it came out in was popular, you know, like because Star Wars was all, you know, things that were popular in the 40s and 50s, and you know,
that is cool. Yeah, just kind of shifting the reference point.
Yeah, it's cool.
Very cool. Well, we didn't quite stick to covering the 3 episodes exactly, but I think we did a pretty solid job, and
I bet we can condense it in the next couple episodes. We talked about a lot. We probably won't retread as much next time.
But it's fun. I mean, it's a great show. So if people like it and they're hanging in for it, that's awesome. So anyway, we did watch this far. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you, Noah, for coming on and taking the time out of your day. And this is
anytime. Awesome. Happy to do it.
Well, we got a lot more episodes to cover, so we'll keep doing it.
Yeah, super excited. Let's do it.
All right. Yeah, we'll have another video up next week.
Awesome.